Are you looking at a round the world ticket, or are you just wondering what is a round the world or RTW ticket? Well, stick around, because in this video today I'm going to plan out a trip which is 12 months long, visiting 12 different countries, and I'm going to go to the 2 providers in the world that provide a round the world ticket, and I'm also going to compare what it would be like if you were to book those flights individually, and we'll see whether it's cheaper or more flexible to just buy as you go along, or to buy it all up front and know it's safe with one airline. So let's jump in. So first of all, what is a round the world ticket? And some of you may have never even been aware this is a thing. I didn't know it was a thing before I started to research my round the world trip. So let me show you. I'm going to jump into a smaller window. Ooh. So this is going to be the itinerary we're going to use to plan the video. But before we do that, I'll talk to you a little bit more about what a round the world ticket is. So there's 2 member airlines that offer this RTW ticket. So that's One World. Now these alliances are basically where airlines have come together globally to say, can we share our flight data with each other, allow passengers to be able to book through one airline. For example, British Airways in the UK, you can book flights on other airlines and British Airways will give you a BA code. So the member airlines you'll be able to find on the One World website. So let me make myself a little bit smaller here so you can see it properly. So you've got, with One World, there's 900 destinations they fly to and 170 territories. I think there's only actually around 14 airlines. So in terms of One World versus the other alliance, Star Alliance, they're actually got less airlines, but they do cover a lot more ground because they have much larger airlines. So you've got, for example, British Airways that covers nearly 200 destinations and 72 countries. You've got American Airlines, which covers 352 cities or destinations, 60 countries. Iberia, Cathay Pacific, Finnair, Japan Airlines, Qantas, Qatar, Sri Lankan, Fiji, and Oman. So it's quite an extensive network. The One World network is the largest network globally. Whereas the other option that you have is Star Alliance. Star Alliance is a network of 26 airlines that you can use. And again, what I found personally when I was using them is it didn't meet the criteria of the places I wanted to go, but it's going to be completely dependent on where you are in the world, so where you're starting and where it is you want to visit. So what I'd like to do in this video is just show you an example of how you go through the booking process, because I found it honestly quite frustrating. The systems kept breaking, I kept getting errors, and the rules that they have around the tickets maybe aren't as clear as I was hoping they would be. So yeah, let me talk you through it. So the example itinerary we're going to use in this video, I'm going to show you up visually on a map first, and then I'll show you in a spreadsheet. This is just so that way it's a lot faster to enter the information in. And what I found is that you have to write this information down somewhere because the tools aren't necessarily very reliable at saving the information, especially when you start to input more than a couple of countries. So this trip is going to be starting in Manchester in the UK. That's just because that's where I live. And we're going to be going over to Delhi in India. And the rough timetable of these locations is we're going to be spending around 30 days in Delhi, then after 30 days flying to Colombo in Sri Lanka, then after that flying over to Hong Kong and spending, I think it's 2 weeks in Hong Kong, then flying over to Hanoi. Now, what the plan would be here is if you're going to land somewhere like in mainland Asia, then what I want to do is kind of make my own way across, so I wouldn't then be on another flight until I got down to Kuala Lumpur. So one thing to be aware of with the round the world tickets is that if you're going to do internal flights when you land in countries, it's probably not the best use of your round the world ticket. There are limitations in terms of how many miles you can fly, and a lot of the time in countries it's a lot cheaper to just buy direct flights from the airline than add it onto this itinerary, because it can get very complicated very quickly. So we will fly into Hanoi, spend, I think it's about, let's have a look at here. So flying to Hanoi on the 14th of September, and then we want to be leaving Kuala Lumpur, flying to Hanoi on the 16th of July, and then leave on the 14th of September. So we've got 60 days in mainland Asia. So what that means is there's 60 days for us to find our own way all the way here. We'll get to this later in the itinerary, because the way that the airlines calculate this, they actually still calculate the land mileage as part of your overall mileage allowance. so it doesn't necessarily save you any mileage, if that makes sense. When you hit Malaysia, so KL, we would then fly out of there to Bali. After that, we're then going to fly out to Sydney. From Sydney, we'll make our own way up to Brisbane and then fly over to Auckland. And then we'll fly our way over to Santiago, Chile. And then we're going to spend a couple of weeks in South America, so 60 days in total. So find our own way to Brazil, and then flying out of Sao Paulo to Mexico City, and then from Mexico City flying out to Miami, finding our own way then across America over to San Francisco, and then landing in Toronto finally before we then return home. So that's the itinerary as a whole. Now, the round the world tickets, there's a couple of conditions of how these work. The first condition is it has to be no more than 12 months of travel. So the ticket is valid for 365 days. Secondly, you have to travel in one direction. So that means you can either go east or you can go west. But what you can't do is go that way, then come back a bit, then go there, go back a bit, then maybe go home and then come back out and go somewhere else. You kind of got to continually keep moving in one direction. So if you are wanting to go away for maybe a month or two and then have the option to come back home and then go back out again, this probably isn't the ticket for you, because you have to kind of commit to being out away from your home country, moving continuously for at least a year. You can obviously come back sooner than the year. You can come back quicker than the 365 days. But in my opinion, if you're going to have that limit of time, I would use it. So I would use it to the max. So on the itinerary, I have actually put that we're going to be out for 364 days in total. So I've put like a departure date and, arrival departure date of whatever we're going to be landing in each country or city, how many days we're going to be staying there. So this gives us 364 days, which is great. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and find out how much this will cost. So I'm going to look at, across all these flights, how much this all costs on the One World Alliance, how much it costs on the Star Alliance, and how much it costs on, if we're going to buy them individually, on, and I'll be using a site like Skyscanner just to get some quick quotes. So let's start planning the itinerary. So on the One World website, there is a section called Round the World. So when you select that, it basically gives you the introduction to how this ticket works. And it says here that there's 170 territories we can visit, and there's a few different fares. So they've got a continent-based fare, which depends on how many continents you're going to visit. There's a Global Explorer fare, which is the distance-based one, or there's a Circular Pacific, which is intercontinental journey, which is for continents that are on the border of the Pacific Ocean. So there's different terms with all three of these, and I'm just going to jump into the planner because I'll show you. It tells you, based on your itinerary, which fare it is that you are valid for and which one you're not. So let's just jump straight in. So when you go into the booking engine, just continue as a guest, and then here what we're going to do is it gives you a list of countries to start populating. So how many adults are traveling? And for me, it's just a solo trip for now, so just me, economy, and no preferred airline. And at the top here, we see the fare eligibility. And as we start populating this with information, it's going to tell us what fare that is valid for. So let's start. So we're flying out from Manchester first. So Manchester to Delhi. And that's on the 1st of May. And so here we have our next error. So when you're trying to plan this round the world trip, the issue is going to be that, like, we're in March now and I'm filming this video today, and we're setting off on this trip in May. And flights are only usually available to book up to 360 days in advance, mostly with most airlines, however some airlines not. So this is where, as we're trying to plan beyond February next year, like, there just isn't any flight data or prices available. So what I did, just to get a quote, and it's what kind of was advised to me when I spoke to the airlines, is you just put dummy dates in. So bring everything forward a little bit. So if I say I'm going to fly to Santiago on the 1st of December, even though technically we're going to spend 2 months in South America, just to get a price, I'm just going to put a month in there for now, and then just say I'll fly to Mexico like a week later fly to America a week later, and then fly home a week later. Now, that won't be the actual flight path or flight date, sorry. But what happens is, once you've got a quote, which usually is based on the volume of mileage that you're doing, then when it gets closer to your departure, if you do book the ticket, they'll be like placed in as just dummy seats. And then what happens is, when you get closer to the departure date, you would then call up and say, can I change X, Y, and Z? Because now there's flights on sale, I want to change the dates to the dates I actually want to fly. They allow you to change, as part of the terms of this ticket, flights for free up until the day that you travel on the ticket for the first day. But after you then set off and fly, there is an administration fee. That administration fee is $100. Now, that administration fee of $100 is based on changes. So the benefit here is that, let's say you were in Santiago or South America and you were like, I want to stay here longer, so I want to cancel my flight to Mexico. I just want to go straight to the US. And also then I want to change the date of my Toronto flight. All those free changes would be bundled under one fee, because you are making one change to the overall ticket, even though there's multiple changes being made overall. So that's one of the benefits of this type of ticket, rather than you buying your flights individually, where you may have fees with all the different airlines that you're booking with. Hope that made sense. So we've got to add our final return on here, Manchester, because the ticket will only work if you end up bringing yourself back to where you started. And you can see there's a handy little map down here that also basically shows you what I was showing you before on the other map. So it shows you where we're starting, then the 2nd, the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th stop, which will be New Zealand, 11th, Santiago, 12th, Brazil, 13th, Mexico, 14th, Miami, 15th, San Fran, and 16th flight is the one in Toronto. Now, you can see at the bottom of this tool here, it says some information. This is really important. So it's saying here that there's an estimated 16 segments on the flight, and the maximum segments you can have is 16. Stopovers, there are 11, and there's a minimum of 2 stopovers that are required, and a maximum of 15. The total mileage that this ticket is 37,821, and the maximum amount of mileage is 39,000. That's the limit. So at the moment, it's saying that this itinerary is valid. So you would hope that, based on what this is telling us, it's like, this is a ticket that I can book. I just need to put my final date in here at the end, and then it should allow the book button to appear. I'll choose flights here. So again, I just put a dummy date in for now, because I can't book any further ahead than 12 months, and this flight doesn't set off for another 3 months to the date we're in today, so I'll have to just call and change those. Let's jump back up here and have a look at the fare eligibility. So it's saying here that it's a One World Explorer fare. This is probably going to be because of the volume of stops that we're doing. Although you can actually break down the information to have a look, and it tells you each individual flight, whether it meets the conditions or not. So this is where, for the One World Explorer fare, we can see we are meeting all the conditions. And it tells you which parts of the itinerary it's noticed. Oh, you're going to have to make your own way between Hanoi and KL. You're going to have to make your own way between Sydney and Brisbane. And you have to make your own way between Santiago and Sao Paulo, and Miami and San Francisco. So that's perfect. That's what we want. Whereas with the Global Explorer fare, the maximum amount of miles you can do on that one is 26,000. And there's a maximum of 4 stopovers permitted in Asia, so it's much more limited in terms of how many flights you can get within each region of the world. So let's jump in and see, because now we can actually book it. Let's see what happens. Oh, it's still there. Damn. Okay, so what in this case, what I would recommend doing is just adjusting the date. So just try select another date. I'll just bring it forward a little bit. Hopefully there'll be some availability. Okay, 3 minutes later, we still have errors. So it looks like there is quite a few errors here in terms of there isn't any available flights on those days still. So this was actually, it's coming back to me now, the memory, because I was looking at this maybe 3 months ago, and I went through this many times where I just had to keep choosing different random days till hopefully eventually it allowed me to go through to the next stage. So yeah, leave it with me. I'm going to play around with this until hopefully I can get you to the next screen so you can see what comes next. Still trying to get this thing to work and it's not working. Yeah, patience is a virtue, so they say. I mean, I've selected nearly every date in March now and they're not able to give me a cost. So I might have to change the destination of the first flight just so we can get something to work. And so just so you don't think I'm being a Karen here, I'm going to just show you that if I look here, I'm looking for a flight on the 5th of April from Manchester to Delhi, which is saying that there is no flights available on here. So if I look at that for the 5th of April on BA, you can see that there's no direct flights for this route, but there are connections because I'd have to connect through London Heathrow. And so maybe not the best flight because you have to wait for 10 hours in London, but there's another, so I could fly at 7 a.m. and land in Delhi at 11 p.m. and there is economy seats available. There are actually multiple potential times that day that are available, and there are flights available on every single day because BA fly out to Delhi from Heathrow every day and they fly out from Manchester to London every day. But for some reason, their data isn't being connected through to this tool that they use within the One World Alliance. No matter what date you select, it just doesn't allow you to see it. No matter what date you select, it just doesn't allow you to see it. And if anybody is saying, oh, well, maybe this isn't working because you've got your departure at airport different to what's on here. So if I choose London Heathrow, for example, it's still telling me for the date you selected, we're unable to find any availability. So it doesn't matter what date I'm selecting here. It's just there's an issue with the One World site finding the available flights that British Airways has. And the problem is if you're leaving and using this ticket in the UK, like most of the airlines you're going to have to use to get out of the UK are going to be BA because their hub is in the UK. All their flights leave from the UK and go elsewhere. So that will be your starting point. It's going to be using British Airways. So what I found when I got stuck with this error is I called British Airways and they have a sales team, and I explained I wanted to buy a One World around the world ticket, and I gave the screenshot of this itinerary to them, and I explained that I could see on their website that they did have flights available that were leaving from London Heathrow going to Delhi every day. And they explained that yes, there is some issue that they're aware of here where it's not allowing those seats to come through. So it goes to a pricing team that will then go away and put together a price for you. And the pricing team will go and check all of the different legs of the journey to ensure that they are going to be valid. And at the moment it says here it's valid. But what I found is that actually this is what it does as like a pre-check. When you go to the next stage, which I will hopefully get to show you on this video, I'm going to find a way, you then select your individual flights, almost like we were seeing on Skyscanner, where you could see which flights are direct, which flights are not. And the problem is if you end up having to choose a non-direct flight for some of these, then it adds extra miles on it and it pushes you over. So then you might have to go back and you might have to change dates within the system, so then that way you can find a direct flight. Or if not, you might have to take flights out of the itinerary. And so that's the situation I found myself in when the pricing team at British Airways came back to the person there who was super helpful. She was really, really helpful to kind of explain how it all works, and also explain that this is not really a ticket that British Airways sells a lot of. And it makes sense, you know, you've got to be committed to travel for a year. So who can generally travel for a year and also plan it all so far up front, and also be committing to only traveling in one direction over a certain period of time. There's a lot of restrictions that are on the ticket. So when the pricing team came back, they said that there was too many miles on the ticket, even though this system said it was okay. And so they had to take some flights off. So how many miles does it take to fly around the world? So anybody got the answer? 24,901. If you were going to be going directly around the circumference of the Earth, that's the equatorial circumference of the Earth. So one of the things to note is obviously you've got these allowances, which I think is like 39,000. So it gives you a variance of maybe what, like 14,000 miles that you can deviate from that if you were going to fly. I mean, you can't fly directly around the circumference, but when you're thinking about how many destinations you have that take you up and around from there, every time you're deviating from that path of moving forward, if you're moving up or down, it all adds on to the total mileage you get. So let's have a look at the Star Alliance. So the Star Alliance, as mentioned, has more airlines, but actually covers less countries. So let's have a look and see how this works. So it allows us to start a new itinerary here, and it's wanting quite a lot of information from us. So it wants information like which country we're in, which class we want. We're flying from Manchester. And then your departure date, which is it's the 1st of June ideally, but as you can see, we had to change the date on the last one. 1 adult, 0 children, next. And then basically this gives you the breakdown of the rules. So fly with multiple Star Alliance airlines on one single ticket. The start and end of your journey has to be the same country. Travel up to 39,000 miles. You have to go either east or west, and you have to travel from 10 days up to 12 months after your first departure. So what that means is you can't stay just in one place with it. And yeah, so let's carry on. Let's just jump in and try and put it in here. It's got a tool similar to what we were using before, but a nice helpful map. So let's say we're going from Manchester, so it already knows that. Let's not give it that as our next destination. Delhi. Then weirdly as well, they don't think they have any flights out of Brisbane, so I'm just going to put Auckland in next, and just say we'd go to Sydney again. This is where you start to find you're compromising a lot, and you have to compromise with any trip because you're not going to get exactly what you want. But I think what I found with Star Alliance is my compromises were so great that actually it just ruled out that alliance for me immediately, just because it didn't have the same flexibility that the One World one did to go further and try and see if that was a viable option. What I do like about this one is it gives you a live flight built up as you're making the itinerary though, so you can, if you have a fixed budget you want to spend on flights and you're not negotiable on it, then that way you can actually go in here and remove elements from the planner and be able to get a kind of a live quote, which is a lot easier, I personally found, to be able to see, oh, you know, am I going wild here? So you can see here that actually for this itinerary it's telling us it's 41,000 miles. Now, it's pretty much the same itinerary, apart from the fact that it thinks we are flying between some of these destinations. So, let's remove some of that from here. So, one of the things that happens here is if you've got this wrong, you can basically go in and reorder it with the mouse and then move the destinations around. So, it's not possible to fly from Auckland to Santiago, and it's not possible to travel from Auckland to... Yeah, so basically we need to find a new route to get here, and it might be that we fly to somewhere else like La Paz or Lima, so let's see if it's possible. So let's just delete these countries out for now, because I think let's just go further with it, right? I mean, it's saying we still can't fly from New Zealand to Chile. I could probably then go and try and find another airline, but I think the Star Alliance doesn't offer any flights from Australia, New Zealand into South America. I might be wrong, so please let me know in the comments if I've just been lazy and I haven't actually looked. But ultimately, for me, the issue here is that the mileage is already going to be too much when we add this in. And, you know, even though I haven't got the land distance between Vietnam and KL, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference when this flight gets added in, because it's still not happy with the Bali to Sydney flight. So for me, this isn't a workable option for the itinerary I want to do. It might be for others, because as you can see, there's loads of countries and destinations. So I think especially for people maybe who are in America, or maybe who want to visit more heavily, like Africa, Europe and America, there's loads of options. But when you start to look in Asia, you can see there's very little options in terms of China or really like any other kind of countries around Asia as well. So it's quite limited for me based on what I'm doing. So Star Alliance is ruled out. Okay, so let's have a look on Skyscanner now and see how much all these flights are. So as we were mentioning, we can put a cost together for all of this individually and see. It's a lot more effort because you've got to go and book with all the individual airlines, but I'll get to a point at the end which is actually, I think, one of the most important things I've learned throughout this whole process whilst I've been planning this trip, and it's the approach I've taken for my journey coming up this year. So if you go in here and type in your destination, so it's going to be Delhi, the first place we're going, and then add the date, which is the 1st of June. And then so there's a return date here. What we need to do is we need to change this to one way. So at the top here, you can choose it to a one-way trip, one adult. I wouldn't take direct flights for now because let's just see what's available. You can always filter it out and then search. So then we can see here that we've got the cheapest flight that's flying out from Manchester to New Delhi on the 1st of June. There is no direct flights. Is this one here. Well, actually, no. Yeah, the cheapest one. This is where I'm always a balance of it might be cheaper, but if you've got 3 stops and it takes, how many hours does that flight take? It's going to take a long time. Yeah, it's 21 hours. So you might save £100 for 21 hours, but I'd much rather be on a flight that's only going to have a quick stopover and it's 13 hours, so you get more time in the destination. So that would be £361. So let's pop that in here. Individual flight, £361, Etihad Airlines direct. Perfect. So the next one is we're going to Colombo, and so we can just go up here to the bar. I just use this little switcher here, which then puts Delhi there, change to Colombo here, and then just adjust the date. And we're just doing a month in India, search flight. And it's a lot faster than using the One World Alliance site, I found. But anyway, yes, so then it's giving us a cost here, but wait until it's searched through all the airlines because it's, there we go. So the cheapest flight would be direct, 3 hours and 35 minutes, and it's £150. So what's also interesting when I was looking at this round the world trip is that actually all these little flights mean you're never really doing an overnight flight when you're doing a round the world trip, because you're obviously just going small distances with an itinerary like this anyway, which was my preference really. This date is on 11th of Feb. So this is where we may come up with some issues. I don't know, it's still letting us book up into next year. We'll hit a point where it stops us, or we just don't get any results. So it's saying here that a lot of these flights are with a connection and it's only showing you one airline. So this shows you that we're now hitting that barrier where not all airlines have planned this far ahead yet. So what I would recommend is with this date, let's actually just go back and put it as, like, if we're going to leave on the 11th of March, let's say. So you can see there, then you've got a lot more options. There are actually direct flights as well that do fly between Sao Paulo and Mexico City. And again, you've got to take this with a pinch of salt because this is looking at the availability for the next 2 weeks rather than in a year's time. But it gives you the full amount of airlines that are flying there. So, for example, if we were to look at direct, then it would be a 9-hour flight. At the moment, it's around £700 of LATAM, but I would imagine if you were to book that, I mean, let's even have a look. If we book for, like, say, November the 11th instead, how much is that LATAM direct flight if it's going to be 8 months away? It's still around £700 actually, so that's interesting. And or there is an option to fly with Aero Mexico for £600. So it's interesting to just see and have a look. We're obviously we're planning very far ahead here. So for now, it's just about having the data and the information, and that way you know what the rough price is. A little tip I would recommend is having flight alerts set up. So you can either do that through Skyscanner, where you can basically say, I want to get an alert if there's you sign up with the website, you get an alert if the price goes up or down. Also, Google Flights do a very similar thing, where if you have a Google account, you're using the Google Flight search, you can ask to have an alert set up, so you can monitor those prices, and then if you see a dip in price or start to hike up, whether or not you want to choose to buy that flight. So for now, just for the purpose of this, it's around 700 it looks like, whether it's in November, March, or even potentially in next year. So I'm going to say it's around £700 with LATAM direct for 9 hours. So one of the things to also have a look at is if you can't find direct flights where you know there are. So for example, I do know that you can directly fly from Toronto to Manchester because I've searched for it. So it might just be that you've chosen a day when that airline doesn't have flights. Let's see, we can see there isn't any. So if I go back to choose another date like we were doing before, so we can see, there we go, there is an Air Transat flight, which is around £500. So if I put that in here for now, again, bearing in mind it is based on this year's dates, pretty much every flight we've got here is direct, apart from the one from Colombo to Hong Kong. And the total cost of all of these flights together is, drum roll, £3,142. Now, one thing to bear in mind is that, you know, this doesn't potentially include hold luggage for the entire trip. So it depends. If you're going to be traveling with a suitcase and on each flight you need to bring that suitcase with you, then this itinerary you'll need to delve deeper into to understand, does Etihad offer hold luggage? And I think it does, because I have actually booked an Etihad flight to India, and it does include hold luggage. So I know that one does. I think it's like 15 kilograms or 20 kilograms. But you want to just check if you are bringing a suitcase. On this type of trip, you may not bring a suitcase, or you might bring just a carry-on suitcase for the cabin. But obviously, if there is not that included, then the cost will go up. So it could potentially be more than the £3,142. And bearing in mind as well, as we said, we've been using this year's flight costs, I think, from the fact that we hit this part here. So you could almost argue that everything in this section has been based on 2024 prices. So they actually may be even more expensive depending on if the cost of fuel goes up between now and the time you book, but also it could go down because we're looking at availability of flights that are leaving the country in the next few months, and so therefore usually the less availability, the higher the price. So there's a lot of factors in play here. And so again, we talk about the compromise, but what I found is that those 12 flights I was hoping to book with this ticket went down to something like 7 or 6 flights eventually, due to the mileage needing to be under the limit. So then it got to the point where I was looking at the individual flight costs and looking at the costs that was provided to me by British Airways for the for the round the world one world ticket, and actually they're the same price, because if I'm only booking 6 flights on this ticket, I'm still going to have to go and buy loads of individual flights to do internal and also do like local Asia flights, and I'm still going to have the hassle of speaking to individual airlines, booking on individual airlines. The part of this ticket that was, oh, you have one ticket with one airline, they look after you for the whole year, kind of starts to disappear when actually they're only going to be less than a third of all your flights over the year. And then also the restrictions around it, you have to return 365 days later than you set off, also then felt quite restrictive, especially when one of the tips I was given by people who are traveling is to not book your flights too far in advance and to actually just see how you feel when you're in different countries. So, for example, I was told that the best thing to do if you are going traveling is just to book the flight to the country you're entering and the flight out. That way you can get your visa. And then you might find that actually you want to stay a little bit longer or later. You can always do that. Or you might choose that you want to go somewhere else because you might meet people and they say, oh, we're going to go and do this activity. Do you want to come with us? So you want that flexibility. If I go and book all of these flights that I've got in this spreadsheet here, I suppose I'm kind of then committing to all of these dates. And actually, if things change, I've then got to go and call the airline, ask for a date change, or it's going to charge me a fee. And yes, the price may go up, but that's where the price alerts are useful, so you can see and get emails and book the flights just closer to the time when you're going. Also, one of the benefits, I suppose, of traveling like this is I get the option to, if I want, fly on a different day. So I can see there's a really cheap flight on the Wednesday, and on this it says I'd leave on Friday. Why not? Would I not leave a few days earlier and save myself some money? So that's one of the key things that I've learned from this, is even though I've got all the data in here of how much it costs, I'm only booking just before I go ahead. And so what I've now done is I've removed quite a few flights from this itinerary just to try and get it to work, really. So we're now down to 31,000 miles, way under the max, but it says it's invalid. It's calculating whether it's happy or not, but it's been stuck. Well, it's calculating whether it's happy or not, but it's been stuck like this for some time now. The departure, oh yeah, that's why, because I've got some weird flight at the end. Let me get rid of that. So now leaving London, missing out India completely, going straight to South Sri Lanka, and then going to Hong Kong, then going to Vietnam, then going over to Bali from KL, then going to be flying from Bali to Sydney like normal, and then going to be finding my own way to then going to find my own way to New Zealand, then go to Santiago, and then find my own way from Brazil to Mexico City. And I mean, let's just see, is it going to work? And we're still spinning here. It's been 95 minutes. So, I mean, I'm not going to be able to give you a price. What I can give you is I'll give you an idea of what price I got costed for an itinerary similar to this. So it was around maybe £4,000 that I got from British Airways when I asked them, and the pricing team came back and had a look at it for me. So that was a similar amount of flights. It was slightly different, but ultimately when I did my own research and looked at it, it worked out the same price. And why would I not want the flexibility of just being able to book what I need when I need it, than having everything kind of have to be pre-agreed? And also, if it's this difficult booking something, how difficult is it going to be changing something? How are you trying to get a hold of British Airways whilst I'm in another country, different time zones, etc.? In summary, I would recommend booking individual flights. Unless you're going to visit 3 or 4 countries and that's your round the world trip, then maybe the One World Ticket or Star Alliance might be able to provide what you need, but it's going to probably become more limiting to your overall trip unless you are going to just go to a continent for a set amount of months, and then you've got the flexibility of doing other internal flights. If you want to try and do anything more than 3 or 4 flights, I've personally found it's just not worth it. It's more time, it's a time suck trying to plan anything more complex in it. So you look at the individual flight costs. I mean, try the tool, hopefully it works for you, but it will just probably be easier if you just book directly. So as always, thank you for watching. If you like the video, please hit the like button below and subscribe. I'll be putting out new YouTube videos every Monday. See you next week.